It Happened One Night is one of the best romantic comedies of all time. I believe it's the only romantic comedy to ever win Best Picture.
Columbia Pictures at the time was close to bankrupt. They were not doing very well as a studio. And this was the picture that really kind of pulled them up. It was when the ticket sales actually bumped them out of a close to bankrupt situation. I really like that we get to see Clark Gable not as the suave Southern gentleman that everybody associates with him.
I think he's one of my favorite romantic comedy heroes ever. He is a snarky, sassy, handsome guy who comes across Ellie Andrews, and he is a gentleman and wants to help her. He is just charming. But at the same time, he isn't afraid to give her crap and put her in her place.
Why, you ungrateful brat.
He's a drunkard, he's a rogue, he's a kind of a disreputable character in this one, but he's still charming, you know, he's still Clark Gable, he's still able to win the lady over.
Remember me? I'm the fellow you slept on last night.
He has some of the coolness of Rick from Casablanca, mixed with this snarky sassiness, mixed with this smart everyman thing. He's just an amazing guy. I want to be more like him.
You have Claudette Colbert, who's playing Ellie Andrews, and she's sort of this rich, stuck-up brat, or so you think at first, and she's running away from her father to be with the one she loves, and she doesn't have access to her money, and she just has to sort of rough it all the way from Florida up to New York. And it's really fun to see this person who's used to being very privileged, having anything she wants at the snap of her fingers, kind of rough it.
You needn't concern yourself about me. I can take care of myself.
You're doing a pretty sloppy job of it. Here's your ticket.
My favorite scene in It Happened One Night occurs after they've had to spend the night together. There are people searching for Ellie, and they come to this cabin where they're staying, and so they decide quickly that they have to pretend to be husband and wife. And at first Peter starts this act, and you wonder how Ellie's going to react, because we haven't really liked her up to this point. And then all of a sudden she starts playing along, and it's hilarious.
It's comic gold, where they just kind of play up the stereotypes of married living, especially in the 30s.
Let an ounce of brains in your whole family.
Oh, Peter, why you've got violence? I won't marry you.
Shut up. Now you see what you've done?
One of my favorite scenes is a scene where they're on a bus ride, and there's this really, really annoying guy who keeps hitting on Claudette Colbert. And then Clark Gable, he's getting kind of fed up with it. So when the bus comes to a stop, he gets out with the guy and he confronts him, and he gets him to go away. And the way that he does it is just brilliant.
It Happened One Night is one of the earlier journey movies filmed on the road, where the road itself takes a major part in the development of the story. So you get that really famous hitchhiking scene where she's showing her leg a little bit, where he's eating the carrot, which is one of the inspirations for Bugs Bunny.
They also have this amazing running gag throughout the show about the walls of Jericho,
which we find at the very end becomes kind of a running joke. There's nothing like a sexual innuendo from a Bible reference.
Behold the walls of Jericho. The walls of Jericho will protect you from the big bad wolf.
I wish you'd take those things off the walls of Jericho.
Oh, excuse me.
One thing that I think is really fun about It Happened One Night is it's a romantic comedy. It's probably one of the famous romantic comedies of all time, but the two never actually kiss throughout the entire movie. But you never need it. And at the end, you aren't feeling like you missed that. They don't overplay the physical element like a lot of movies do today. I think that makes it such a stronger movie.
Frank Capra doesn't use emotionally manipulative tricks. He relies on the strength of his actors in order to tell the story, and with It Happened One Night, that's what it's all about. There is nothing interesting happening outside these two characters, and they are fascinating.
One reason why this movie in particular was so successful in the Great Depression and why it won Best Picture were really a lot of elements. If you think about a Great Depression audience going and watching this movie, the hero is someone who has just lost his job, someone who is poor, and someone who's just kind of smart. So this is a character that they want to identify with, and they do identify with. And the whole time you're rooting for this poor guy to get the rich girl, as opposed to the rich girl getting with the rich guy. That would be very appealing to Great Depression audiences.
I'm not sure if so much of it is believable. Yeah, that's one thing that I'm not too keen on. It's just, it's the writing is fabulous, the acting is wonderful, but the whole thing just does not gel in a way that makes it believable 100%. And so it doesn't work on every level for me, but it's still just solid entertainment.
My rating for It Happened One Night is 5 stars, hands down, one of my favorite movies of all time.
I give It Happened One Night 4 out of 5 stars. Very solid storytelling, acting, writing, just the implausibility of the whole situation is the only thing that takes away that 1 star.
I give this movie 4 out of 5 stars, and the reasons are, first of all, there's a couple of scenes that just run really long. There's also the other man in Claudette Colbert's life that we hear a lot about, and we see him a little bit, but we never really get the sense that he's the skis that everybody tries to tell us he is. We're told that he's an awful guy a lot, but we don't get to see him being an awful guy.
This is an Oscar-winning performance of Clark Gable's. He was actually on loan from Warner Brothers at the time to Columbia because Warner Brothers had nothing for him, and they just still had to pay him his $2,000 a week salary and had nothing for him to do, so he was just sitting there collecting money. They loaned him to Columbia for $2,500 a week. So they were able to cover his salary and then just pocket the $500.
Something that's fascinating about It Happened One Night is it's one of 3 movies throughout time to win the big 5 Oscars, being Best Picture, Best Director, Best Leading Actress, Best Male Actor, and Best Screenplay. The only other 2 movies to ever win all 5 of those are One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Silence of the Lambs.
There's a scene where Clark Gable has to undress in front of the camera a little bit, and he was wearing an undershirt in the scene initially, but he couldn't get undressed fast enough, and so they had him ditch the undershirt. It seemed like a pretty minor deal at the time. Well, after this movie, it became the cool thing to not wear an undershirt across the whole country, and as a result of that, sales of undershirts plummeted all over the country.
One of the best scenes in the film is where they're hitchhiking, and Claudette Colbert decides that in order to get a car, she's going to show off a little of her leg. But Claudette Colbert was a little modest, and she didn't want to have to show off her leg. That was making her uncomfortable. But then they brought on the body double, and Claudette Colbert saw that woman's legs, and she was like, no, those are not my legs. We're using my legs.
The script was looked at by lots of different actors, actresses, and they all said, no, I'm not going to do it because the script has issues. And so he took it to a playwright friend of his, asked him, how do I make these changes? What's going to work best for this film? They made the changes within the week, everything had done, and it ended up winning the Oscar for Best Writing.
If you like this movie, all of the main people involved are in a lot of other good movies. Claudette Colbert is in a movie called Since You Were Away, which is a World War II film. Clark Gable is, of course, Gone with the Wind, which is always recommended. And for Frank Capra, you can watch any Frank Capra movie and it'll be amazing. I obviously recommend It's a Wonderful Life. I also recommend Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.